Vouchers, my friend, we need to get back to where we can pay for our own education. Next up, and Carol left this at the very end, so I didn't see it until I was almost done reading the notes. I've been given carte blanche to ad-lib about our next speaker because I know him so well. Most people in talk radio came from music radio because we really weren't talented enough to be musicians. Me, Glenn, Rush. But there is somebody in conservative talk radio who is talented enough to also be a very talented musician. And if you can find the right YouTube links, you can see that as well. He spent some time inside as well, where he watched City Council go ahead and say, no, well, there's always going to be more money coming from somewhere. And he kept them late at night. They still rue those days when, at 2 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, Rob would finally let them all go home. Ladies and gentlemen, from WINA Radio, Rob Schilling.
And you know, it's funny Joe mentioned the music thing, because as a recovering former rock and roller, I never thought I would say this. Hey, can you please turn it down? You know how many times I heard that. And isn't it interesting that we're here in front of this pit of vipers in Charlottesville City Hall on this day talking about taxes, the people that have robbed this community of $50 million in surpluses over the last 10 years and lined their pockets and then brag about it every year. Mayor Norris the Red, you should be humiliated. Your face should match your hair. You know, the topic of this talk today is It's the Spending Stupid, but I would elaborate on that a little bit. It's the stupid spending, all right? And I'm going to go one step further, and I hope I don't insult anybody, but it's also the stupid people, all right? Because that is the problem. The people who have taken the reins are not informed. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of the people to whom I reference. It was not long ago up in Greene County, defensible ground, as one man said, that Tom Perriello was holding a rally, and in the front of the rally, this was shortly before he was defeated. Yes, indeed. We all breathed a sigh of relief when that happened. There was a lady who was old enough to know better, walking around with a shirt that said, "Patriots for Perriello. If ever there was a contradiction, I have not seen it." Now, let me tell you about this. The Patriots opposed unjust taxation. Do we remember that? Do we remember what people died for? Do you remember, I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country, Nathan Hale, as he was taken to be hanged? And we have somebody saying Patriots for Perriello, a man who never met a tax increase that he didn't like. Right. Did Nathan Hale die for the Cowboy Poetry Festival in Nevada? No. Did Nathan Hale die to fund Planned Parenthood and their abortions and evil agenda? No. Did Nathan Hale die to fund so-called public broadcasting? No, he did not. And so these people are warping patriotism into something that it never was. And the lady who wore the shirt that said Patriots for Perriello was nothing but a lie. Oh, but it doesn't end there. We have another one in the city of Charlottesville by the name of Mary Lee Webb. We christened her last year a tax increase hero. I would like to read you the letter that was published. It's very short in the daily newspaper last year. This is again by Mary Lee Webb. Listen to this line by line. Please evaluate. Not raising taxes, listen, not raising taxes is a no-win situation. When we pay taxes, everybody is helped. Education, mental health, transportation, the desperately poor, all suffer when taxes are not raised, when the needs are so great, all at this time. Raise taxes, exclamation point. Yes, I will vote for whomever does so. I love this community. Speaking of Charlottesville, that is the sickness that has infested America today. People that think raising taxes is the way to solve our problems. I found it absolutely disgusting. As we go forward, we have a problem with education. As we spend, and the city figures are a lie, it's a deception. Go do the math and divide the number of students in Charlottesville schools by the number of dollars that are being spent every year on education. It's a lie what they tell you. The figure is close to or exceeding $19,000 a year. So you need to do the math yourself and don't believe what they're telling you. We have government schools that are designed to fail students as far as constitutional knowledge. This is what happens. We are producing people who are graduating with a mentality of mouths open and hands out. What can you give me? What can you do for me? That is going to be the death knell of America if it continues. And the sad thing is, we are all paying for it. Go ask any person who steps off the ledge after graduation in Charlottesville High School what it is the government is for, and I'll bet you anything, they're going to tell you that government is to take care of them or to give them something. That is being promulgated right here in this building, and it is being promulgated nationwide. It's a lie. If you don't believe it, go read the Constitution.
Government is the problem.
Yes, indeed. Let's talk about the stupid spending in the corrupt city hall where elected leaders are freely dipping from the public trough every year to buy votes. I saw it when I was in there. They're getting the votes by asking people, hey, what can I do for you? Can I give your nonprofit some money? And then they get up here and make a speech and say, I'm running for city council. Who's standing behind them? The same people that they're handing money to. You know it's the truth? I can document it. It's also a problem in City Hall when we have $5,000 worth of free pizza parties. Councilor Kristen Zakos, hey, vote for me, I'll give you free pizza. The only problem is it turned into something more expensive, and every time they get together, it's $500. You add it all up, it's over $5,000. That's an insult to the taxpayers in the city of Charlottesville. But oh, it gets worse. They want to put a clock on the downtown mall. How much is that? Hey, if you live in the county, don't laugh because they stole the money from you too. It's $25,000 because they want to have an art contest here for who can design the best clock. That's not what government's all about, but it gets worse. Let's talk about the new signs that were put up around Charlottesville, the so-called wayfinding signs. I didn't have a problem finding them all before the new signs went up, but you know how much the new signs cost? They were over $800,000, and when you add installation and other costs, I'll bet you it was close to $1 million. Don't laugh, you paid for it. But it gets worse. We have over $100,000 spent for the so-called community dialogue on race, where the guilty Democrats inside City Hall who have been discriminating for years in the city of Charlottesville, who have been in control of everything that's gone on here for decades, spend $100,000 of your money to try and solve the problems that will only be solved by a change of heart in the church, not in the government building that created the problems in the first place. You know, I was once sitting in that building at a budget meeting, and I want to tell you, this city council tried to give itself $250,000 worth of money this year to spend on what they call priority initiatives. It got cut in half to about $125,000, but that's a crime because that's money that they used to buy votes. And I was sitting here probably about 6 years ago, and Councilor Meredith Richards was next to me, and I made a motion to take that amount of money, which was lower at the time, down to nothing, and she turned to me and she said, please, don't touch our play money. And that is the way they look at money in this city hall. It's theirs, it's not yours, and that is the genesis of the problem in America. We don't need any more government officials who think of this money that they've taken from you by force as play money. We need to be liberty-minded all the time, not just when it suits us. We have a theater down here called the Paramount Theater. I'm going to tell you, there was someone who masquerades as a conservative Republican who wanted to support, and in fact did support, my candidacy for city council. But you know what he said to me behind closed doors? You make sure you give a little money to the Paramount Theater. Okay? So when you want to be a conservative, it doesn't matter where the money is going, it matters what the principle is. We need to be consistent. We need to understand that the basis of our liberty is private property. And when the profligate spenders steal our money, they are not only taking away your money, they're taking away your property and undermining your liberty. This is not the commons. This is the United States of America. We don't promote communism. We don't promote the commons. We promote private property. And those are the things that we should be focusing on. Let's remove the temptation. When there is a cookie sitting on the counter and I tell Gabriel not to take it and I walk away, he's tempted because I've left it there. I once had to slap his hand when I said, Gabriel, don't touch that. And he was about 2 years old and his hand went like this and I went, slap! And you know what? He never did that again when I told him not to touch something. He probably did it behind my back. But if we have a pile of money sitting over here in City Hall, that's temptation. And unfortunately, we have children running the government, not just here, but all around. They have never matured. They do not understand what it means to be mature in handling someone else's money. And so when you have a pile of millions of dollars sitting on the table, somebody needs to be there to slap the hand and say, no. All right, so we live in a place that says, and we have political leaders here that say, you know what, we live in a democracy. And where does that lead? The small d democracy. We live in a democracy. Well, it means the majority vote rules everything. That's not what the country is. Where does that lead? It leads to tyranny. It leads to totalitarianism. And that's what we're seeing happening in America today with this democracy and the mob rule that's being promoted by people who don't understand our government. Yes, it's the spending stupid. It's also the stupid spending. And most importantly, ignorant and uninformed people are causing the problem. People who run for office and have no idea what the country is about. The big government feast is robbing us of our wealth, and in doing so, it is stealing our liberty. So it's time to fight back. Remember, we have to control spending. That's constitutional. Let's learn the Constitution. Let's read it, Mayor Norris and others, and understand what it says. Let's reduce the size of government. This city once ran with about the same population as it has today on about 300 employees. Now it's well over 1,000. We need to go back there. We need to reform and reduce taxation because the current system is playing favorites. Everybody has to be in it together. Look, if half the people plus one can say raise taxes on all the other people, that's exactly what they're going to do. When we're all in the same boat together and people are taxed equally, that way when you raise taxes on one, you raise it on everybody, and everybody hurts, and everybody will say no. And finally, we have to truly educate our populace on American constitutional principles, because it is the ignorance of people elected in this building and across America that have gotten us into the problems we face today. There is hope, but it starts with reading the Constitution. Thank you.